Hey guys, let's talk about Blue Note Records and the new documentary that just came out. It's called Blue Note Records Beyond the Notes, directed by Sophie Huber, who is a filmmaker from Switzerland. I'm going to tell you about my experience seeing the movie and also give you my review. And this is definitely a thumbs up review for me. But let me get into interesting experience I had at the movie theater the other day. So a little movie theater in Glendale, California. This is the second week in Los Angeles, and I go to this theater, and it's a small art theater. As soon as I walk in, feels like I'm in the popcorn line. It's a small little room. So I'm standing there, and I look down, and there's Herbie Hancock. I'm standing this far away from Herbie Hancock. He's right in front of me. Somebody came up to do a picture with him. I did a picture with him, so I guess I can die and go to heaven because I've met one of the last great jazz legends from the Blue Note era. So I'm standing there, what do I talk to Herbie about? Hey Herbie, looking forward to hearing you speak tonight after the show. And he's like, I'm not giving a speech. You guys got to ask some good questions. So then I say something like, I'm looking forward to this movie. And he's like, I hear they did a good job. Me too. And he hadn't seen it yet, so I thought I was a little surprised that the movie's been out on the festival circuit for more than a year, and Herbie hasn't seen it. And he's one of the main events of this movie. So then I get my popcorn, I go and sit down, and I find a seat that's in front of the reserved row. So the dignitaries are sitting one row behind me. So I can look over my shoulder just a little bit, and there's Herbie. So a couple times during the show, I looked over to see Herbie's reaction. Like if Herbie's on the big screen in front of me with Wayne, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That felt kind of like a special moment to me. All right, enough of the fanboy stuff. Let me get into the movie. By the way, picked up this nice postcard, which is the poster, obviously, but it also has the upcoming dates on there. I don't know if I can read them this way. Let's see. It's coming to Austin and Detroit and San Francisco and Minneapolis and Phoenix. So look for that coming up soon at a city near you. Some of those are only one night showings. The last two, Minneapolis and Phoenix. All right, let's talk about the movie already. First of all, this movie has a great aesthetic style, an aesthetic experience. That's kind of, it's hard to miss that. I mean, you're looking at some of the world's greatest black and white photography and greatest graphic design on the big screen and listening to some of the world's greatest music. So even if you don't know that much about Blue Note, it's great just absorbing and soaking all that up. As far as the content, one of the challenges, the filmmaker actually mentioned that one of her biggest challenges was fitting 80 years of material into a 90-minute movie. So some people might say, well, why didn't you cover this? Why didn't you cover that? I don't think you mentioned Hank Mobley or whatever. She did a good job of balancing all the different decades in the Blue Note story. My channel is mostly watched by vinyl record collectors who are really obsessed with the 50s and 60s, but that's only 2 out of the 8 decades of Blue Note. So give her credit for shedding some light on the very early stuff, the creation of the label back in the 78 RPM era, and the new stuff. There's a lot of new musicians featured in this, not just people like Nora Jones and Robert Glasper and Gregory Porter, but there was some live music being played by new folks, and them talking about how Blue Note influenced them. Even some hip hop and rap artists were talking about the relevance of Blue Note to them today. And I think that's good that she's trying to tie it into the current generation, because otherwise this is all about nostalgia, about stuff that's 50, 60 years old for old dudes. And so I give her credit for bringing the new generation into this thing. One of the devices that she used, there's lots of little subplots going on here, lots of little vignette stories. She did a little vignette on each of the major formative artists in Blue Note history. And you're going to say, well, they didn't cover the person I wanted, but she covered the ones she covered. I mean, Thelonious Monk was like the first big. He wasn't a star then. It was actually very risky for them to even sign Thelonious Monk, because his music was considered very bizarre at the time. But 4 or 5 minutes on individual artists like Monk, like Miles and Coltrane, Lee Morgan. I don't want to give you any spoilers. I'm not going to name them all. The one that surprised me a little bit was Bud Powell, just because I don't know his music that well. I know he was very big in the early days of Blue Note, but I heard some good tunes from Bud Powell and thought, you know what, I should probably go check out some Bud Powell records. He's the piano player. Art Blakey was obviously covered in detail. That reminds me, on a little vignette, the title of the movie, I thought, Beyond the Notes. What does that mean? That's kind of vague. It's kind of, almost sounds like a cliche. That phrase came out of something that had to do with Herbie Hancock, so that phrase was part of the movie, and it was in reference to Herbie Hancock. I'll let you watch the movie and figure out what they were talking about. There's a lot of kind of lessons in this movie. The rise and fall of the music business, the record business, where jazz kind of fits in society, the civil rights movement, black identity movement, all that stuff is covered in the movie, which I think is good. So it's more than just, hey, it's a love fest, Blue Note's the greatest, we love Blue Note, we love Blue Note. I mean, that's part of it, but there's other subtopics in this movie that I'm glad she touched on. The big one is, how did any record label create such a high level of quality consistently for year after year after year? No other record label has done that. No other record label was that focused on the quality as opposed to focused on the money. And that's, you can guess how that ends when you focus on the money and it's not all about the music. But I wish some of those record executives today would go watch that story, because there's some good lessons there. What else was I going to mention? Okay, so the people that are on screen, now, Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, they're like the dynamic duo of jazz. They're still, relevant and great to hear from them. I was fully expecting to hear them. By the way, there's a Wayne Shorter documentary coming out soon. That's maybe in a year. Let's keep our eyes out for that one. Don Was, president of Blue Note, obviously, really gets a lot of credit for bringing Blue Note back to where it is today, which is, an important jazz label, and he's got a lot of good stuff to say about the history of Blue Note. And you may have heard him say similar stories in other documentaries. I don't know how many times he can give you the same story and tell it different ways, but a lot of documentarians are hitting up Don Was. Rudy Van Gelder is in the movie, and I think he's already passed away, so there's archival footage of him and recent footage of him. Rudy Van Gelder, the engineer extraordinaire, and Michael Kuskuna was a producer for Blue Note in later decades. He is now the holder of the great collection of film negatives and contact sheets, so he's the curator and archivist of the great visual look of Blue Note and the photo negatives. Very important body of work there. Lou Donaldson, didn't even know he was still alive. He is looking like he's up there in years, but he had some great stories to tell. Who else? Anyway, I don't want to give you too many spoilers. This movie's definitely worth seeing if you like jazz, even if you're just slightly interested in jazz or the history of music or vinyl records or whatever. Important movie for you all to go out and see, so please do go see it. I think that's about almost everything from my little notebook here. So after the movie, this is one of the reasons I wanted to see this movie on this last Sunday night. After the movie, there was a question and answer hosted, moderated by this guy Mark Maron, who's known for his WTF podcast. And, he doesn't know that much about jazz and whatever. He talks too much sometimes, but he's good. So, and I actually filmed probably 8 or 10 minutes of this question and answer at the end. and maybe I'll edit that into something else. I'm not going to edit into this video. It's going to take too much time. But so I did sit through another half hour of question and answer after the movie, and that's kind of a special experience. I think it's, you know, something you're only going to get in LA and New York, is to sit and listen to a great like Herbie Hancock, and B, the filmmaker, talk about all their experiences putting the movie together. Herbie went into the whole story of how he kind of started with Blue Note, how he got started, how he got invited to play with Blue Note, and how all that started. So I'll try to get that video together for you guys, but you know me, I'm late half the time. One interesting thing the filmmaker mentioned was that this movie was not funded by Americans at all. That was a little bit surprising. And Mark Maron was kind of hitting them with this question: why isn't jazz popular in America? Why is it more popular in Europe than it is in the US? I can't really begin to answer that question right now, but she mentioned that she had a hard time raising money for this film, and nobody in America wanted to give her any money, and actually the Swiss taxpayers paid for this movie, even though they probably don't know it. Could have been that much, a few $1,000,000. And the BBC. And I don't take that as any dig against American philanthropists not wanting to fund jazz. I'm just assuming it's because she's an unknown quantity. She's only done one other movie before. She did a movie about Harry Dean Stanton, the actor who he did some like weird country singing thing before he died. So that movie got really good reviews, but she herself is not yet a super well-known filmmaker. I think that covers it, guys. That is my review of, let's end on the poster, Blue Note Records, Beyond the Notes, and it's got a little bug from Tribeca Film Festival and Sheffield Documentary Fest, and it's played at all the film festivals and won all kinds of awards. So if you like jazz, if you love Blue Note, urge you to go out and see this movie. It's only playing in a few places, and it will be out, I don't know, DVD someday. Keep your eye out for it. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think, and keep that vinyl spinning. Bye-bye.